Some of the world's most notable Stoics include Epictetus, which translates to acquired, as he was once owned as a slave, Seneca, who was a well-renowned statesman, and Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and one of the most powerful men to have ever lived. The early Stoics practiced what they preached, avoiding all forms of segregation and leading the fight against inequality. They even invented the word cosmopolitan, which literally means citizen of the world. When people hear that word now, we think of cities like New York, Toronto, Dubai, and London because of how diverse they are. This was the type of unity and togetherness that the Stoics preached. Even at a time when it wasn't popular, women were allowed to freely learn about Stoicism and become Stoics themselves. So why do so many people adopt Stoicism as a way of life? In a world full of unexpected turns of events, our emotions can tend to get in the way of things. In reality, we don't really get sad because bad things happen to us, we get sad because unexpected bad things happen to us. Rain is a good thing. It helps to water our plants, provides water for livestock, and keeps the temperature cool and humid. But the truth is, when that dark cloud catches you outside without an umbrella, it's never a good experience. So why don't we start crying once it starts to rain? It's because although the situation is bad, we've learned to expect rain. It's something that is unavoidable. We can't control the weather. Although it sucks, the rain passes and the light returns. Stoicism teaches us that in the same way, we should expect that everything bad that can happen will happen. Picture the worst outcome, and be content knowing it could happen. One of the Stoic exercises is known as voluntary discomfort, an exercise aimed at increasing feelings of gratitude. Sleep on the floor of your kitchen, taking cold showers when you normally take hot ones, eat nothing but potatoes for a few days, things like this. This exercise helps you to understand that no matter how hard it gets, you'll still survive and potentially thrive if your mindset is right. By being able to withstand these uncomfortable situations, we indirectly prepare our mental for future misfortunes. With the current state of the world where advertisements are constantly being shoved down our throats, we're made to believe that if we don't have the next best thing, look a certain way, or make a certain amount of money, that we will never be happy. This message is more important now than ever. We enter the world not knowing much of anything. We grow up being taught things at home, in school, and by observing the world for ourselves. The thing is, a lot of times, all three of these sources of knowledge teach us in different ways. The question is, do we need to internalize all of this knowledge? If we do, we could unknowingly be setting unrealistic expectations for our lives, leaving us ultimately disappointed and unsatisfied in the end. That's no way to live. We should instead focus on improving ourselves, for ourselves. We should do things for ourselves and only for that reason. Attaching any external hope or secondary attachments to the actions we take almost always lead to disappointment. Most of the time, we end up trying to fulfill that emptiness with external things, blowing all your money on a fancy car, a house, or even starting a family. Sometimes we do all of these things for their external value and not their internal value. But Stoicism teaches that if you approach life this way, you place your happiness in the hands of external forces, forces that can always fail. Cars almost always break down, natural disasters wipe away entire cities, and divorce rates climb higher and higher each year. But even the free things in life come at a cost. The cost of space, both physical and mental. As Seneca once wrote, "Learning to live with less will create space in your life for the things that truly matter to you." Instead, we must place our happiness on our intrinsic value as humans and on nothing we have or can physically acquire. We must choose to do our best to keep a cool head, regardless of what life throws at us. Because regardless of what it is we want, at the end of the day, we don't have any control over the majority of things that happen to us, but we do have all the control over how we react to those things. That is the dichotomy of control, the most important principle in Stoic philosophy. Stoics teach that we must learn to separate what we control from what we cannot control. We need to determine our value not from things we can't control, but from the things we can. Striving towards goals is a good trait, but breaking down when those things don't go your way is, in a Stoic's point of view, useless. Making YouTube videos is, well, a lot easier than being a Roman emperor, but it can still prove to be challenging sometimes. First, you must form your idea, which takes forever. Then research that idea. Scrap it because it sucks, start over, script the video, create the video, edit it, make the title, thumbnail, and everything else before you hit upload. Everything up until the point where you click upload is all up to you. However, Once you click that upload button, the power shifts to the YouTube algorithm. Still, a lot of people judge the success of their YouTube channel or Instagram account based on how many views and subscribers or followers they have, metrics of which for the most part are beyond your control. Stoics teach that instead, you should judge the success of your work based on the amount of effort you put in, and not on the outcome of your external hopes. Trust the process. Think about a person who has been working hard at their job for the past 6 months. He now feels he deserves a promotion, and so he walks up to his boss with his performance report. The boss says thanks, doesn't grant him the promotion, and he goes home thinking he must suck at his job. He doesn't consider that the boss might have simply woken up angry, someone else might have been better qualified at the time, or maybe the company was just losing money and couldn't afford it. He doesn't know the reason, but he's still upset. If he simply placed his value on the quality of the performance report he turned in, kept doing what he was doing to earn the promotion he wanted, he could have been much happier overall. With the right perspective, his goal wouldn't have been diminished, but just postponed. It's this reframing of your mindset that is crucial. A true Stoic does not view their successes based on the financial gain of their ventures, but is comforted by the fact that they can live a comfortable life without all the things money can buy. These are the 4 main virtues of Stoicism: wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. Wisdom is being able to separate between what is internal and what is external, and the ability to choose our reaction to the things that happen to us. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and that space is our power to choose our response. Courage, 2 words: persist and resist. Temperance, or moderation, is what I just did there, doing more with less, saying more with fewer words. While Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are fighting at the top of the Forbes list, Stoics believe that the limit of wealth should simply be having what is essential, and then having what is enough. Justice is the most important of all the virtues. It instructs that no one should do harm to another because we were all born for each other, to do good to one another, and not to ourselves. Nelson Mandela was one of the most famous African leaders in the world. While he was fighting against apartheid, he got sentenced to life imprisonment, where he stayed for 27 years before finally being released. When he was released from prison, he was elected president of South Africa, and thus, many people thought he was going to brutally punish all the people that had anything to do with apartheid or his imprisonment. But of course, he did not. Throughout his time in prison, Mandela read the works of Marcus Aurelius and learned many of the core values of Stoicism, all of which he practiced throughout his life. Instead of calling for the heads of the wrongdoers, Nelson Mandela urged his people to instead seek the opposite, to relax and rebuild. He stressed that the past was now beyond their control, and that the only thing they could do was find a way to move forward and build a better nation. This is the way of the Stoic. In modern-day medicine, Stoicism is at the core of procedures like rational emotive behavioral therapy and logotherapy. REBT helps patients to identify negative thought patterns that might be causing emotional and behavioral issues. It allows you to challenge the reasoning behind all these negative thoughts with logic, and when you realize that many of them are unfounded, you can then replace them with more productive and healthier beliefs. Logotherapy, on the other hand, is based on the Stoic principle that humans are driven by purpose. Even in the darkest of situations, we can fill our lives with meaning and happiness by simply finding out what that purpose is. As many of us know, though, this is easier said than done. It's a process, much like everything else. We have to rewire the way we think, out with the old, in with the new. To fix our problems with happiness, we must practice self-worth. By redirecting our definition of value to the things that we can control, we can stop getting fixated on the things we cannot control, and overall, we can lead a much happier and more fulfilling life. Stoicism helps us steer through past and present storms into calmer and more peaceful waters. And if our ship sinks and we all drown, we can take peace in the fact that we lived a good life, albeit not as long as we had hoped. Because remember, everything has an end. In 2012, Drake made a song titled The Motto, but what most people remember from it is YOLO. YOLO tells you to live in the moment, enjoy life you have today, and not worry too much about tomorrow. Because at the end of the day, you only live once. While Drake certainly popularized the motto, he wasn't the first to use the phrase, and he certainly wasn't the first to come up with the idea of enjoying the pleasures of today without worrying about tomorrow. This idea has been around since the 4th century BC, as what philosophers call hedonism, a school of thought that was created by Aristippus of Cyrene, a student of Socrates. Hedonism is the idea that the end goal of all of our actions in life is to 1. Pursue pleasure, and 2. Avoid pain. Aristippus believed that the only good cause worth pursuing was one that will ultimately bring you pleasure. In today's society, we're taught that the way to succeed is to suffer today so you can enjoy tomorrow, to save for the rainy day. Once we get out of college, we're encouraged to find a job and work hard at a 9-to-5 for many years, live modestly, and save as much as possible so we can enjoy our retirement 50 years later. Aristippus didn't believe in any of that. He didn't believe in the idea of delayed gratification, and he always advocated for people to simply get pleasure from what is present and available. He was completely against the idea of suffering in the present in order to get something that only might be pleasurable in the future. So instead of telling students in college to study hard for their exams so they can land a good job after school, for example, Aristippus would encourage them to fraternize, drink, and party lavishly, because these are the pleasures that are readily available to them. On the one hand, you can see him as stupid and lacking foresight. After all, if you squander everything you have on the pleasures of today, you'll quickly run out of resources, and all of that pleasure will turn to pain. From people losing everything they had because of an addiction, to people living in poverty as a result of their own laziness, we've seen the results of solely focusing on the present pleasures. But on the other hand, there's some wisdom to this school of thought, because truly, tomorrow isn't promised to any one of us. What's the point in working hard at a 9-to-5 for 50 years, ignoring all of the pleasures of the time, only to die a few years before retirement? And let's say you do make it to retirement. The sad reality is that 1 in 4 people will have a disability by the age of 60, and the older you get, the chances of that happening increase drastically. Knowing all of this, is it still foolish to think that we are all better off just enjoying the pleasures that we do have in the present? Socrates and other philosophers at the time certainly believed so. A lot of philosophers hated the idea of hedonism, because saying that the end goal of the entire human existence is simply to pursue pleasure and avoid pain just sounded vain. This opposition, combined with the rise of Christianity in ancient Greece at the time, meant that this extremely rash idea of hedonism died with Aristippus. Many years later, Epicurus, who is considered the father of modern-day hedonism, redefined what hedonism was. And to do that, he had to start by redefining a certain word: pleasure. For Aristippus, pleasure was a state of ecstasy and excitement, that amazing feeling you have after biting into your favorite food or after that first sip of coffee in the morning. And for most of us, this is how we define pleasure. But not Epicurus. For Epicurus, pleasure was a state of tranquility. Instead of encouraging people to indulge themselves in constant gratification, Epicurus believed that the true meaning of pleasure was to kill the fear of both death and God, because only then would you truly be able to fully enjoy what this life has to offer. While Aristippus simply encouraged people to pursue pleasure, Epicurus believed that all human beings do everything to gain pleasure and absorb pain. He didn't encourage it, because according to him, that was our natural state anyway. To defend this point, Epicurus asks everyone to look at how babies view the world around them. They don't really understand how the world works yet, but they do understand 2 things: when something feels good, and when something feels bad. When something feels good, the baby is joyful and happy. When something feels bad, the baby cries because it wants that pain to stop, and it wants to return to said pleasurable state. I'm sure at this point you're wondering, if we're all solely pursuing pleasure, then what about selfless acts? Acts that are done solely because they are virtuous or valuable for other people and not ourselves. How do we describe those? Well, in hedonistic ideas, it's simply because those things make people feel heroic, which ends up being processed in your brain as a pleasurable feeling. So, at the core, it is still pleasure they're chasing, just not the kind we might be thinking about. According to hedonistic teachings, there are 2 types of pleasure. There's moving pleasure and there's static pleasure. Moving pleasure is when you're in the process of satisfying a desire. When you're hungry, you eat. When you're thirsty, you have a drink. When you need a timeout, you take a nap. Static pleasure is the tranquility you feel once you're done satisfying those needs. At this point, the adrenaline has finished coursing through your veins and you're left with a sweet feeling of satisfaction. In that moment, you feel a sense of tranquility and you keep feeling it until it is sadly replaced by pain. Because according to Epicurus, there is no in-between. The absence of pain is pleasure, and vice versa. But even with this more modest way of explaining hedonism, a lot of people still disagree and even frown at the idea. And this is because of one thing: the idea that pleasure is the only source of intrinsic value. Think about it for a second. If pleasure is the only intrinsic value, then what do we make of things like finding meaning in life, achieving great things, building and maintaining long-lasting relationships, becoming a legend in a particular field, or even something as simple as living religiously or upholding a set of moral beliefs that we hold dear to our hearts? Hedonists might try to argue that all of those things do not hold any value themselves, and that they're only valuable because we get pleasure from them. But something like upholding religious beliefs isn't always pleasurable. In fact, most times it restricts the kind of pleasure you can get. But still, it gives people a sense of fulfillment that for them is better than the pleasure they're forsaking. If self-pleasure alone is the aim of human existence, then people who benefit from the wrong that happens in our society will never fight against it. People would never fight for the common good when it might affect them negatively. But yet, every day, we see people put their own desires on the side to help other people. People get excommunicated from their families, rejected by those they love because they chose to speak up and fight for what's right, even if the issues don't affect them directly. If we're all chasing our own pleasures, that would never happen. We'll all be too busy enjoying our broken society because it benefits us and not worrying about trying to change it for someone else. Another huge stumbling block that hedonists face when trying to argue their beliefs is the worth of reality. If pleasure is the ultimate goal, then it shouldn't matter whether that pleasure is real or imagined, right? If we say that people always intrinsically pursue things that are pleasurable, then if there is an option for unlimited pleasure, they should never choose anything else, right? To answer these questions, Robert Nozick created a thought experiment, giving people two options. He asked them to choose between being plugged into a pleasure-giving machine for the rest of their lives and living their current reality with the pain that exists in our world. People always picked this reality, because in the end, living a life that's not real is pointless and meaningless. And even with the option of the most pleasurable thing in the world, people would rather have pain that's real, whatever real means. As I've said previously, the best memories are the ones you remember with both pleasure and pain. 20 years after he left his childhood home, Abraham Lincoln came back only to see the entire place in ruin. As he looked at it with tears in his eyes, he said, "My childhood home I see again, and am saddened with the view. And still, as memories cloud my brain, there's pleasure in it too." This beautiful mix of pleasure and pain is something that the hedonistic view of the world simply does not account for. When you're graduating high school, you're excited for the adventures that await you in college. You'll probably be leaving home for the first time, and you'll finally be alone, able to enjoy what the world has to offer. That feeling is pleasurable. But the feeling is also painful. You'll miss your high school friends and the simplicity of childhood. You'll miss your parents, your siblings, and the community that you grew up in. And though these painful thoughts cloud your brain, there will be pleasure in it too. Hedonism is frowned upon in modern-day society because it opens the door for a trap that you can easily fall into. Pleasure is an insatiable desire. If you get hungry and fill your belly, it only takes a few hours and you're looking for something else to eat. It's an unending pursuit. So if that becomes the entire reason for your existence, it can quickly become difficult to control. This is how most people become addicted. It starts out as just a fleeting pleasure, and before you know it, the reason you're doing those things stops being the pursuit of pleasure and starts being an unquenchable and uncontrollable thirst for those things. A trap that's very difficult to come out of, one that many people get stuck in for the rest of their lives. But this isn't to say that we can't learn some things from hedonistic principles, because as much as we might not like to think about it, it's true that tomorrow is not promised. So we might as well make the best of today. Things like making a conscious decision to enjoy the little everyday pleasures can help us lead a happier life. If your car breaks down and you have to walk to school, don't be in haste. Embrace the journey. Walk with a friend, make jokes with them, and always leave each other on a good note. Craving a cup of coffee? Head out to your favorite coffee shop and order your favorite drink. You've earned it. You don't have to wait until you're retired before you can start reaping the fruit of your labor. Take those vacation days. The promotion can wait a few more months. Stay on that call with your friends for an extra hour. Missing an hour of study probably won't make you fail. Because even if seeking pleasure might not be the ultimate goal of human existence, it's certainly a worthwhile pursuit. Today's video was sponsored by Morning Brew, the daily email that makes reading the news enjoyable in just 5 minutes a day. Happiness is the only priority, and if you've ever looked at any traditional news outlet, you'll know that it's full of depressing stories, and that sucks. However, it's imperative to stay up to date with what's going on in the world. There's many options out there, but personally, I use Morning Brew. Morning Brew is a free daily newsletter that gets sent out 7 days a week directly to your inbox. In less than 5 minutes a day, I'm up to date on everything business, finance, and technology. Traditional news is, not my cup of tea. But with Morning Brew, I'm caught up on everything I need to be before I even get my morning coffee. I found this actually saved me a lot of time over the course of 3 months of using it, and is a much better alternative to scrolling through social media 2 minutes after I wake up. Whether you're really into technology or just want to keep up to date with the markets, Morning Brew is perfect for almost anyone. With the Delta variant running rampant, we may just be going into lockdown again soon. Morning Brew is entirely free for anyone to use. If you click the link at the top of the description, you can sign up to Morning Brew in less than 15 seconds. After that, you're all set. Subscribing to Morning Brew has had a positive impact on daily life, and I imagine it'll do the same for you as well. You'll not only be supporting my channel, but you'll be keeping yourself up to date with reality at the same time. Consciousness. It's our awareness, our understanding, our ignorance. Our daily consciousness leaves out more than it takes in. And due to this, it leaves out important things. Things that would help relieve us if we knew them. If we had a higher awareness, a better consciousness, we would feel better. We would be more at peace with things. The deep down truth of things is screened by our consciousness. Our sensory organs will pick things out. Our eyes can only see certain things, our ears can only hear certain things. We have to create instruments and other tools to see things we as humans cannot, to expand our understanding and thus our ego, or consciousness. Humans evolved and became the dominant species on Earth by a long shot. It's due to our innate ability to network with each other. If humanity was wiped out and restarted, like loading an old save file, communities would still form. Structures within society are inevitable due to the variety of brains. Some are good at critical thinking, others are more artistic. However, we are all wired with some innate features. Just as humans form societies that evolve, other creatures do as well. But we're different. We are customizable characters, basically. We can kind of mold ourselves into whatever kind of person we want to be. We can't know for certain that animals or any other life on Earth is conscious or can even function in the same way that we do. Let's put it this way. I know that I have my own thoughts and feelings and emotions, but how can I know for certain that you, or anyone else, does? There's no way I can go to your head and see things 100% from your perspective. I can't know what you're thinking, or if you can even think in the first place. To truly understand the universe, to understand and actually experience life, you have to give yourself up. There's no point in sustaining bliss, and being permanently at an all-time high. The life you're living is what you have put yourself into, what ego you've formed, only you don't want to admit it. You want to believe it happened to you. Day to day, you play non-bliss in order to be able to experience bliss. You put yourself into bad situations, you let in the negative experiences in life just to feel some kind of satisfaction when it goes the other way. Self implies other, white implies black, death implies life. You can feel your existence as fundamental, not as an accident. At the basic level, at the lowest level imaginable, you are the fundamentals of existence. The same thing that makes you is the same thing that makes up everything else. If you can step back from what you believe, if you can step back from what your sensory organs have turned you into, you start to see things for what they actually are. Do you define yourself as a victim of the world, or as the world? Love is only possible due to the lack of self. You give up all your secrets, the walls you've built to keep people at an arm's distance slowly lower, one by one, until you're a completely open book, until all your pages have been read, and the rest of the pages are blank, waiting to be filled with this newfound love. In basketball, or soccer, or football, you're constantly giving the ball to someone else. The point of the game is to have the ball in your hand for the least amount of time, to constantly be passing it to someone else, to shoot it, to get it out of your hands. It keeps the game going, and life is the same way. If you define yourself, you, as only being what your ego is, as the things you do voluntarily, then you're the victim. It's because of some higher power that you were put here when you didn't ask for it. But what about the things you do involuntarily? Do you beat your heart, or does it just happen to you? You do those things, even though you don't know how. Words don't work here. As Alan Watts said, everyone is fundamentally the alternate reality. Not God in a traditional sense, but God in the sense of being the self, the deep down basic whatever there is. And you're all that, only you're pretending you're not. A mind that can ask, who am I? Why am I here? What is the purpose of all of this? Tends to forget. As I said, your consciousness tends to leave out critical information at times. A consciousness that can view the world and take in sensory information tends to forget what's behind those eyes. A mind that hasn't gone deep enough to find where those questions come from. Because the same place those questions come from is the same place those answers lie. The brain controls everything. In order to go to the extremes of the universe, to places we can only dream of going, we must first dive deep into something that is all inside of us. Take the Big Bang, for example. Now there's hundreds, thousands of theories as to how we came into existence, but let's go with this one. You believe that you are strictly you. Your human body is all that you are and all that you have ever been. You're simply a small speck of dust in a vast sea of galaxies, stars, planets. You're irrelevant. But rolling back the clock, things get smaller. The universe was more compact. The atoms that make you up are building blocks of the universe, of the hot gas clouds that form stars, that allowed solar systems to form, that allowed planets like Earth to form. If you keep rolling back this clock, you were around at the very instant everything came into existence. That is you too. When everything was infinitesimally small, you were there. But we define ourselves as being only us, mere humans walking on a planet that we didn't ask to get put on. But frankly, every one of us somehow made this happen. We just go on and pretend we didn't. It's because of how we define ourselves. Are you the victim, or are you the world? As cringy as it may sound, everyone you meet is just a small packet of the universe. A present, whether they're a pleasant one or not, that was packaged together from billions of years of engineering and architecture on a universal scale. But instead, we define ourselves as something completely separate from it, something not connected whatsoever, which is a foolish view. We tend to search for how the universe came into being, but we're just the universe trying to understand itself. In order to get to that conclusion, we have to reframe our mindset. We're not as different as we all think. Your name is given to you at birth. Your ideas and personality are collected from the world. Scraps, bits and pieces here and there cling to you like a magnet. So what part of you is you? We are all different manifestations of consciousness, but we are all fundamentally the same thing. We all may have different egos, different personalities, but when you step back, drop the ego, we are all connected. View the universe as a forest. Every one of us is a twig, a leaf, a branch. But together, we form life. Our origin, our roots, are connected together. Just as the roots of trees form a vast network which brings these massive forests to life, humanity's roots all come from the same place. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred from one form of energy to another. But many of us have this fear that it's all going to come to an end. And while yes, your life will end, your energy will not. It will continue onward, forever. But our consciousness has convinced us otherwise. We form this thought process, almost like we've been hypnotized, to think that we are all there is and all there ever will be, and that it's all going to come to an end. This leaves us unsatisfied and unhappy. But the universe is continuous, and you are technically the universe, so you will continue on as well. Your death is not the end of you, it's the death of your ego. Many people experience the same exact thing while living: ego death. It tends to be induced through psychedelic drugs, LSD, shrooms, the list goes on. While working on this video, I actually experienced it myself, and although not intentional, it provided clarity in a way I've never before experienced. It's not the ego in the vernacular sense, as describing a person's self-worth. It's the philosophical ego. It's the complete loss of subjective self-identity. Everything that you believe you are will disappear. You're void of emotion, of connection to anything around you, of connection to what makes you, you. The idea of being a person doesn't make any sense. The words I, me, and myself have zero meaning whatsoever. The world can normally be put into two categories: myself and not myself. While experiencing ego death, this line is blurred. I am completely gone. There's only the awareness of existence. The lifetime accumulation of your thoughts and emotions are put on pause. It's as if you're on a cliff approaching an infinite void beneath you. Your life is continuous and exists all the way up the mountain until you reach the edge. Beneath you, though, is the unknown. Ego death is jumping into that void, leaving behind everything you've ever known. It's as if you've stepped out of your body into a separate entity. You start to see things for what they actually are, but things don't actually exist. Things is just a noun, it's a fragment of speech, and speech is just another instrument we've created to try and understand the world around us. Our senses allow us to go about our daily lives and traverse the world, but they don't really offer any explanations, so we have to make them up ourselves. While experiencing ego death, you disconnect from all of that. You have a heightened awareness. It's truly as if you're experiencing a higher level of consciousness that no person can understand. You reach this level that words can't explain. The instruments we made to try and understand our place in the universe shatter completely. Explaining it in terms of I saw or I felt don't seem reasonable. Our languages are instruments created to explain things that someone experiences. But while undergoing ego death, there is no someone. There is no me. So how do you describe it? It's as if your slate was wiped clean, your character's save file was corrupted, but you're still in the game. Because of this, ego death can be scary, but it can also be a very enlightening experience. It's both constricting and freeing. It's white and black. It's like you're defining what life is like through experiencing death. We cannot be more sensitive and welcoming to pleasure without being more sensitive and accepting to pain. You're flying and sinking at the same time, being pulled from below, and above, in every direction, at once. While going through it, I ended up reaching a moment of acceptance. Ego death, while often extremely anxiety-inducing, offers a glimpse into a reality free of that. A life free of your personal flaws, your daily thoughts, your responsibilities. It personally feels as if time is frozen, and wherever your mind wanders is free to judge things as they truly are. You are the observer and the observable. Surprisingly, the conclusion I came to is the same conclusion I came to while making a previous video of mine, and it's that nothing in life really matters. Fear in general tends to come from us not being able to make peace with the chaos that is the universe, not being able to cope with the idea of entropy, that everything is tending towards disorder. Forming an ego is disorderly in the same way. You go further and further down your own tunnel, and stray further from everyone else. Experiencing ego death is breaking out of that tunnel, pulling back, and understanding that the network of these tunnels that encompass every human on Earth all eventually return back to the same place. When I die, when my ego is completely gone forever, when my physical body breaks down and no longer resembles the form it's in today, I'll still somehow be here. Right now, I'm an hourglass. The sand is slowly leaking its way to the bottom, and eventually it'll all be there. It's the end of the line for me. But when that day comes, the universe will stop by, take the hourglass, flip it over, and whatever made me me will then become something entirely different. We're all just a temporary collection of atoms, and whatever you and I subjectively believe we are won't last forever. But objectively, we will. For now, just enjoy the ride. Your ego forms who you are, and it's much easier to alter if you're aware of it. Your friends, your thoughts, your hobbies, they're all your puzzle pieces. It doesn't have to be as deep as you think. You can change who you are, how you are, with minimal effort. If you're a naturally curious person, want to build your problem-solving skills, or just need to develop confidence in your analytical abilities, then I highly suggest you check out Brilliant. Brilliant's math, science, and computer science content helps guide you to mastery by taking complex concepts and breaking them up into bite-sized, understandable chunks. Information is everywhere. You're constantly taking it in. And Brilliant is the perfect place to gather knowledge. Whether you're learning a brand new subject or just brushing up on old knowledge, they exist to provide you with the best information there is out there on any topic they cover. They will train you to become a math, science, and computer science expert. So head to brilliant.org/aperture for a free trial. The first 200 of you to check it out will get 20% off of a premium subscription and will allow you to take every single course that Brilliant has to offer. You'll be supporting my channel and your future at the same time. Why do we dream? This is one of life's great unanswered questions. Given that we spend around 6 years of our lives in the dream state, it's no wonder people don't understand why we do it. Sure, there are theories, and I'll get to them, but there's no clear consensus on why we do it. No one really knows for sure. Or do they? Dreams are strange, to say the least, and for many of us, they hold great significance. So much that we like to share them with others at length, if we can even remember them, and try to interpret their secret and hidden meanings. So, do they actually hold any real meaning? Well, I have some ideas. Before we get to some of the bigger questions, let's just look at what goes on inside the brain as our nighttime adventures take their course. While sleeping, we go through different cycles of the 5 stages of sleep. These are divided into REM sleep and non-REM sleep. REM simply means rapid eye movement. It explains itself, right? The first 4 stages are non-REM sleep. These are restorative, and for the most part, dreamless. As we move through these initial stages, our brain activity slows. But about 90 minutes after we finally fall asleep, we hit stage 5, REM sleep. This is when the dreaming really gets going. When we're in this stage, the body is, for all intents and purposes, paralyzed. Your heart rate goes up, your blood pressure rises, and brain activity returns to near waking levels. The paralysis in REM sleep is caused by the release of glycine, an amino acid from the brainstem, onto your brain's mirror neurons. It's suggested that this paralysis is nature's way of preventing us from acting on our dreams, and that's probably for the best. The limbic system is a pretty primitive part of the brain that deals with emotions, and is very active during REM sleep. It's made up of the amygdala, which is mostly associated with fear, the hippocampus, which is heavily involved in the formation of long-term memory, and the cingulate gyrus, which is involved in our physical reactions to situations. Break down the roles of these bizarre brain structures, and we can start to paint a picture of why our dreams often take the bizarre and scary forms they do. Couple this with the fact that the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that deals with logic and self-control, isn't really active during REM sleep, and things might just start to make sense. But understanding it isn't enough to prevent these nightmares from happening. It can also happen while you're awake. Sleep paralysis is a terrifying concept. Like I just mentioned, when you fall asleep, your brain doesn't completely shut off. In order to prevent you from acting out your dreams while you sleep, the brain releases chemicals that leave you paralyzed. This paralysis is supposed to be lifted as soon as you wake up. But sometimes, it doesn't. And that's where you get sleep paralysis. You wake up, you're aware of your consciousness, but you can't move. It feels as if there's a massive weight on your body preventing you from actually waking up. Sleep paralysis is often most caused by disrupted REM sleep, so some people may believe they're still dreaming when they're in fact awake. Because of this, some of your nightmares could leak into the real world. While undergoing sleep paralysis, you'll often see things standing in the corners of your room, or on the ceiling, or even closer. Luckily, this usually goes away pretty quickly. So, Is it just biology? Is that really the answer? Is there no secret window into our psyche? Everyone, at one time or another, has wondered what their dreams mean. Some believe that dreams have no meaning and serve no function. Others believe that they're one of the most important things that human biology has allowed to happen. There's in fact many theories of why we dream and what purpose it serves. I can't really go any further without mentioning Freud. His theories of dreams are probably the most well-known around the world. It focuses on the content of the dreams themselves as an explanation of the function of dreaming. German psychiatrist Sigmund Freud theorized that dreams represented a window into the unconscious mind, a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that are beyond our conscious awareness. The bulk of the iceberg submerged deep underwater. Most of the contents of the unconscious mind are supposedly unacceptable or unpleasant, representing feelings of pain, anxiety, or conflict. When we're sleeping, the forces that keep these feelings in check are weakened, allowing us to live out our desires and even fears through our dreams. Freud strongly believed that by exploring dreams, people could increase self-awareness and gain an insight into their unconscious self that would then help them deal with problems in their day-to-day lives. He also argued that the true meaning of our dreams is hidden within their actual content, and that interpretation is needed to understand how they relate to our unconscious fears or desires. Many of you watching might even agree with this. Despite the fact that there is absolutely zero evidence to back this account, it is pretty much unfalsifiable, even though more modern explanations now exist that are better informed due to a deeper understanding of how the brain works. 20th century Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung also believed that dreams allow us to tap into the unconscious, but argued that it was a collective unconscious that we were able to access through our dreams. According to Jung, this is a theoretical repository of information shared by everyone, in which certain symbols in dreams have meanings that are similar for all people, regardless of culture or location. This could explain why so many of us share variations on common themes in our dreams, like falling, being chased, or our teeth falling out. Any of these sound familiar? Dream interpretation is the process of assigning meaning to dreams. Even today, the practice plays an important role in various forms of psychotherapy, which is surprising given that there is only a little evidence so far that shows understanding and interpreting dreams has a positive impact on mental health. This could be because evidence also shows that people tend not to attribute equal importance to all dreams. Motivated reasoning comes into play. People are more likely to view dreams that confirm their waking beliefs and desires as meaningful compared to dreams that contradict them. But just for fun, let's take a look at some interpretations of the most common dream themes. We've all had the falling dream, right? Well, this could be a warning from your subconscious, and is common in people who are having a major life problem with work or relationships. It could be an indication of insecurities, instability, or worries. You might be feeling overwhelmed and out of control in some situation in your waking life. This type of dream could also reflect a sense of failure or inferiority in some circumstance or situation. It's typically suggested that showing up to work or school naked represents vulnerability and anxiety. Clearly. Research has demonstrated that this dream is common in people who have accepted a promotion, gone off to a new job, or who are coming into public view. Others argue that it means you may be hiding something, and are afraid that others can see right through you. And despite the nightmarish feel of dreaming that someone or something is chasing you, it can be considered a positive message and a little prompt from the unconscious to encourage the dreamer to face a problem they've been avoiding. It's suggested that who or what is chasing you, and how far away they are, is important. These common themes barely touch the surface of the complexity and endless variety and variations of dreams. We know dream interpretation can be entertaining, but there are definitely more contemporary theories about the purpose of dreaming that it's probably important to consider them too. A better understanding of brain function and activity have allowed for the development of neurobiological theories in more recent years, one of which is the activation synthesis theory. Not quite as intriguing as the psychoanalytic approach. In fact, it's pretty boring. This theory simply rejects the idea that dreams mean anything at all, which is disappointing. They could be merely electrical brain impulses that pull random thoughts and imagery from our memories. Activation synthesis suggests that humans can create dream stories after they wake up, in a natural attempt to make sense of the absurd. I kinda get it. There are some holes in this theory too, though, the main one being that there is vast documentation of the realistic aspects of human dreaming, and evidence that dreams do reflect real-life events that are important or prominent for the dreamer. For example, a study in 2006 asked women who were going through a divorce to report the degree to which their former spouses were on their minds over a 5-month period. These same women were awakened during REM sleep on 3 nights, and asked to provide a detailed account of their dream content. A positive correlation was found between the degree to which women thought about their former spouses during waking hours, and the number of times their former spouses appeared as a dream character. In another study, researchers demonstrated that dreaming can help solve complex mental tasks. Participants were much better, 10 times better in fact, at getting through a complex 3D maze if they had napped and dreamed of the maze before their second attempt. This strongly suggests that certain memory processes happen exclusively during sleep, and that our dreams are not only a signal that these processes are taking place, but seem to be crucial to better performance. So, unconstrained by reality and the rules of conventional logic, dreams your mind can create have the potential to lay out limitless scenarios to work through problems and produce solutions that you may not have even considered while awake. So, it turns out that dreams can be influenced by pre-sleep emotions, and can be really helpful for problem solving. So that's another theory put to bed. The continual activation theory proposes that the conscious and unconscious mind must remain continually active in order to maintain proper brain function. In this context, dreams function to consolidate working memories into long-term memories, and dreaming is simply an incidental result of the brain's need for continual activation. This means that if the brain's activity falls below a certain level, such as during sleep, it is stimulated to maintain activity through dreams. The expectation fulfillment theory explains dreaming as a way to release emotional arousals that haven't been expressed during the day. This frees up space in the brain to deal with the emotional arousals of the next day and allows instinctive urges to stay intact. In effect, the action we wanted to take is completed in a metaphorical form, and this prevents a false memory being created, because we perceive the action as a dream instead. So dreams are metaphors for unfulfilled arousals and expectations, but because sleep does not involve the same stimulation of waking life, dreams draw on memory instead of motor or sensory activity. It is this process that apparently generates the unusual imagery, narratives, and thought patterns we experience in dreams. This explanation has received validation anecdotally through people's personal experiences, but same old story, it is essentially unfalsifiable. Interpretation of dream events is subjective, so we aren't able to put this theory through rigorous scientific testing. I could go on with the theories for days, but you get the point. No one really knows. It's very difficult to disprove most theories. Maybe some of the more fascinating dream phenomena can shed light on the function of dreaming. The term lucid dreaming was coined by Van Eden way back in 1913, although people were writing about this kind of experience as far back as the 1800s. It describes a state in which the dreamer is aware they're asleep, and sometimes has the ability to control events and actions. It most commonly occurs during late-stage REM sleep, and essentially allows your conscious mind to control something your unconscious mind normally controls. Lucid dreamers report being able to fly, taste, smell, and touch pretty much anything they want. It's more common than you think, with about 55% of people having experienced the state at one time or another. For starters, participants were asked to perform specific ocular movements if they became lucid while dreaming. By ocular movements, I mean moving your eyes, that's literally it. This is possible actually, and it's kind of ingenious, because eye muscles are free to move during REM sleep. By determining exactly when the sleeper was lucid dreaming, researchers were able to take recordings of brain activity during this state. The evidence showed some interesting and specific brain activity that represents a mixture of both waking and normal REM sleep. It also seems that the brain undergoes a specific altered state of physiology during lucid dreaming that constitutes a hybrid state of consciousness. Studies have shown that the prefrontal cortex, as well as the frontal, parietal, and temporal zones become activated. These areas of the brain are responsible for higher order cognitive functioning, including working memory, cognitive flexibility, planning, inhibition, abstract reasoning. The list goes on. So, besides being quite entertaining, why do it? Can we learn anything from it? Some advocate many potential benefits, including boosting creativity and confidence, reducing stress, and as a possible therapeutic technique to treat nightmares, PTSD, and other mental health disorders. Others view the practice as more spiritual and approach it the way they would a meditation, with the intention of increasing a person's sense of the vastness of reality, opening up new realms of discovery. It's even been suggested that some advanced meditation practitioners are able to become conscious of what is beyond the dream state, the deep formlessness of delta sleep. This is questionable at best and in need of much further study. Given our current relatively limited understanding of the brain, it's hard right now to understand how it could be possible to be conscious of deep sleep, because the brain is in a far more synchronized and deeply unconscious state compared to almost any other state of consciousness. But hey, who knows? Despite the evidence, lucid dreaming remains a controversial topic. Alternative explanations have been suggested for the phenomenon. It may be that lucid dreamers are in a daydream-like state of semi-wakefulness. Or are they dreaming normally but have a memory of the dream and believe that they were conscious and directing the dream but were not? It could be a sleep state dissociation, in which the person is both awake and asleep in the dream state at the same time. I suppose it's even possible that people aren't reporting true experiences, but I personally don't think this is what's going on. If lucid dreaming is as real as the evidence suggests, I'm left wondering, if dreaming serves any of the purposes I've already talked about, such as accessing the unconscious, acting out instinctive urges, solving problems, or whether they're simply electrical impulses keeping the brain from shutting down, how does being a conscious witness affect how they play out? Does it hinder or help? Is it a state of heightened reflective consciousness that humans are meant to access so that we can enlighten ourselves about our life, our world, and our purpose? Or does lucid dreaming stand alone in its function to serve an entirely different purpose? Have you ever dreamt of an event only to find out that it happens in your waking life? It's a weird occurrence. Precognitive dreams are dreams that appear to predict the future through a sixth sense, and there's some pretty famous examples of this happening. When the Titanic sank in 1912, hundreds of people came forward with reports of psychic dreams about its sinking. It was even possible to validate at least 19 of them, including a date-stamped letter. Several people apparently canceled tickets and decided to not travel based on their dreams. Are all 19 of these people psychic? Well, no. In fact, in this case, it's likely to be simple math and the power of probability. Think about it. There's 7.5 billion people on this planet, each having an average of 5 dreams per night, whether you remember them or not. In turn, those dreams support multiple common dream themes, including events like sinking ships and airplane crashes. When all of this is considered, in reality, it's highly likely that many thousands of people will dream about a sinking ship on any given night. Probably tonight too. Now, add in a bit of unconscious insight and media suggestion for a good measure. The Titanic was the world's largest ship on its maiden voyage, and was in the headlines before it even undocked. The media had called it unsinkable. The power of suggestion is immense, and it's no surprise that all this news, attention, and maybe even some nerves about taking such a huge trip infiltrated more than just a few dreams. So, the next time you dream about an event that has nothing to do with you when it comes true, it's probably just a coincidence. Probably. But what about dreaming of your own death? This is a deeply personal experience, and probably not subject to extensive media attention. It's exactly what happened to Abraham Lincoln. 2 weeks before he was shot dead in 1865, Abraham Lincoln had a dream about a funeral at the White House. When he asked someone who was in the casket, they replied, "The president, he was killed by an assassin." Clearly, he didn't listen, because at the time he was assassinated, he had given his bodyguard the night off. If the premonition dream is about something close and personal to you, some might argue that your subconscious mind is accessing a piece of information that you weren't consciously aware of in your waking state. You just missed it. The brain has so much to process every second you're alive. It only makes sense that some information is lost. So, it's less psychic power and more inner feelings or intuition that you're experiencing through your dream. And this takes us neatly full circle back to the question of why we dream. If you don't believe in psychic abilities that manifest in dreams, then precognitive dreams are essentially the window into our unconscious. Of course, as always, some disagree with these explanations of precognitive dreams, and suggest that when matches occur on such a reliable and frequent basis, this can't be entirely down to coincidence. Some of these people turn to a mix of philosophy and physics to understand how precognitive dreams might happen. To truly understand these theories, it is necessary to assume that the future consists of many possibilities, and which one becomes reality is determined by the choices we make. The butterfly effect shows up yet again. Ultimately, common sense would tell us that dreams likely serve many purposes, as opposed to just a single one. And how we choose to understand our dreams and why they happen is largely a product of time and culture. The function of dreams may have even changed as humans have, and continue to change across time itself. What once acted as a rehearsal system for evading predators is now serving to help us navigate the social and technological complexities of modern life and its stresses. Dreaming is vital. The link between dreaming and REM sleep is undeniable, as are the benefits of REM sleep for our health and well-being. So don't stifle them. They're only trying to help you. Sweet dreams. Dreaming is something we all do, and some of the world's greatest discoveries have come from ideas during the dream state. Learning how the brain works is an ongoing journey, but we're already working on making our technology act more like our brains. For example, neural networks. But those can be hard to understand. But luckily, we have Brilliant. Brilliant has a course on artificial neural networks, as well as 60 other courses to help you become a math, science, and computer science expert. They have courses on things ranging from simple algebra to complex datasets and group theory. Whether you're a novice or expert, Brilliant explains things piece by piece before bringing it all together at the end to leave you with a strong understanding of whatever topic it is you're learning. If you enjoy learning or just want to know more about the brain, I suggest you check out Brilliant. The first 200 of you to click the link in the description will get 20% off of a premium membership that will allow you to take every course that Brilliant has to offer. In the year 1925, Einstein shared with a student his burning desire to understand the universe. "I want to know how God created this world," he said as they strolled along. "I'm not interested in this or that phenomenon, in the spectrum of this or that element. I want to know his thoughts. The rest are just details." This one conversation expresses the core of Einstein's guiding principle, one that has driven humanity to inquire, discover, experiment, and most importantly, learn about this universe we call home. But what was Einstein really talking about? And can human knowledge ever reach a point where we understand everything? Since the discovery of the world of quantum mechanics in the early 20th century, scientists have been racking their brain trying to understand how it works. Even a century later, we're still not sure how and why subatomic particles behave the way they do. But that's just half the problem. The discovery of quantum theory posed a more serious issue that Einstein, Stephen Hawking, and other world-renowned physicists have been working tirelessly to solve. That challenge can be summarized in one word: unification. You see, modern physics is split into two pillars: classical physics, the physics of Newton, Einstein, and Galileo, which predicts gravity and describes the motion of massive things in our cosmos like stars and planets, and quantum physics, which governs the world of subatomic particles according to its own set of laws and rules. Both pillars describe their respective worlds accurately, but fail when applied to each other's subject matter. Einstein's preoccupation was that there must be a way that these two worlds could reconcile. There has to be a theory that unifies the world of the subatomic with the world of the massive. A theory that can predict, well, everything. Now you might be thinking, so why should we care? Well, a unified theory that can bridge both of these worlds could potentially unlock many of our universe's secrets and answer some of the deepest philosophical and theological questions that we've been asking since the days of Galileo. What are we truly made of? What happened before the Big Bang? Are we living in a multiverse? The unified theory, or the theory of everything, might just have the answers to all of these questions. The universe and everything in it is glued together by four fundamental forces. I made an entire video on these four forces, so if you really want to fully understand all of them, I suggest you check it out. But for the sake of this video, here is the gist of what they do. Big objects like stars, planets, humans, and cats are all governed by the force of gravity. And thanks to Einstein and his general theory of relativity, we now know that gravity isn't a force that magically pulls objects together. Instead, it's the curving and warping of the fabric of our universe, space-time. While all these big objects are governed by just one fundamental force, subatomic particles, on the other hand, are governed by three fundamental forces, as if they weren't already confusing enough. These three fundamental forces are electromagnetic, weak nuclear, and strong nuclear. Electromagnetism holds atoms together, the strong force holds nuclei together, and the weak force is responsible for some type of nuclear decay. These particles, along with their respective forces, make up what we call the Standard Model. The Standard Model describes the world of the very small. We know that everything in the universe is made of subatomic particles, from planets and stars to humans and dogs. We know that all of these things are made of atoms, and atoms are made of protons, neutrons, and electrons. In the 1960s, we discovered that even protons and neutrons are made of even smaller particles called quarks, and electrons from leptons. Using different combinations of these particles and their respective forces, we can build atoms, molecules, humans, planets, and even stars. So it seems that the Standard Model is a comprehensive interpretation of our universe. But it doesn't include everything. The truth is, Finding the smallest subatomic particles is only the first step to getting to a theory of everything. The second step would be finding a place for gravity in this model. There are two reasons why gravity isn't included. The first is that when it comes to small particles, the force of gravity is so weak that it doesn't have any effect on a quantum system. The second reason is that we don't really know how to incorporate general relativity, which describes the motion of large objects, into the world of quantum that governs subatomic particles. Many great minds, including Einstein, tried tirelessly. It's said that even on his deathbed, Einstein revisited his notes on the theory of everything and tried one last time to find an elegant solution to explain the fundamental differences between the world of the small and that of the large. But unfortunately, he ran out of time. So that's that, right? While we still haven't found a theory that can explain everything, we have made significant progress, and maybe the most groundbreaking was that of another brilliant mind, Stephen Hawking. In 2014, a movie was made on the impactful life of Stephen Hawking. As a result, Hawking became one of the most revered physicists in the world, and one of the most admired by pop culture. Away from the limelight, however, Hawking, like Einstein, had an obsessive yearning to understand the universe and never ceased to challenge our knowledge of it. One of his greatest contributions was the discovery of what is now known as Hawking radiation. In 1974, Hawking discovered one of the biggest breakthroughs of the 20th century, a groundbreaking interpretation of black holes, as well as an unprecedented interaction between the world of quantum and gravity. Hawking's discovery was so ingenious that it gave us hope that the theory of everything, the holy grail of physics, is still a human possibility. Black holes are densely packed regions of space where the gravitational pull is so strong that nothing can escape, not even light. Einstein predicted the presence of black holes through his general theory of relativity in 1916, and we confirmed his predictions in 1974 when we observed our first black hole in the Milky Way. In the same year, Hawking discovered that black holes are like a vitamin tablet placed in water. They can dissipate in time and release energy. This is what we know as Hawking radiation today. But how can energy escape a black hole when nothing else can? Hawking used a quantum understanding to explain this. When we think of space, we imagine large, cold, empty places, but in reality, space is alive with the active creation and destruction of energy at the subatomic stage. Particles are created in pairs, matter and antimatter, and they are constantly created and destroyed in a concept known as annihilation. Hawking imagined a pair of particles created very close to the event horizon of a black hole. This is the boundary around a black hole from which nothing can escape. He then showed that these particles don't need to annihilate each other, since one of them can be sucked into the black hole. If the black hole is receiving negative energy, then it has to release energy in order for the law of conservation of energy to hold. Hawking also proved that black holes lose mass with time, and they don't last forever. But more importantly, he was able to arrive at this discovery by merging a quantum principle with the concept of gravity. This is by far the closest we've come to a theory of everything, a unified field theory, or quantum gravity. But as with most things in science, the fact that we haven't found that one elegant equation does not mean that we have failed. In fact, maybe the real treasure was the discoveries we made along the way, many of which have paved the way for a brighter future for humankind. String theory is one of the most prominent ones. It suggests that subatomic particles such as electrons and quarks are made of tiny vibrating strings or filaments that twist and fold, creating everything in our universe. Just like the strings of a violin, they can vibrate in various patterns, creating different kinds of particles, including the graviton, a hypothetical particle that, according to quantum mechanics, should carry the force of gravity. On paper, string theory could unite gravity and quantum mechanics under one framework once and for all. The theory was popularized in the 60s and 70s, and its mathematics predicts small bundled up extra dimensions that give rise to a network of universes, or a multiverse. While this theory is prominent, it's highly untestable, even with access to the latest technology. String theory, though, is only the beginning. After almost 2 decades of tireless research, we've discovered the Higgs boson. This proved that electrons and quarks inside the atom get their mass from an invisible field that spreads throughout space. discovery took an effort from a group of 3,000 scientists that dedicated endless hours to the cause that would surely bring our species one step closer to understanding our universe. We've also discovered that all the atoms and light in the universe only make up less than 5% of the total content of the cosmos. The remaining 95% is composed of dark matter and dark energy, which are invisible, but whose effects dominate the evolution of our universe. Dark matter provides the gravitational pull that keeps galaxies together, while dark energy is responsible for the ever-accelerating expansion of our universe. For thousands of years, we've looked to the heavens and wondered what mysteries are hiding beyond the clouds. Since 1970, there have been more than 90 telescopes placed in orbit by NASA and the ESA to bring the universe closer to us. And with the James Webb Telescope that launched on December 25th, 2021, we entered a new era of discovery. This telescope is the largest and most powerful one ever built, and its daunting task is to find the first galaxies that formed in the early universe, and peer through dusty clouds to see stars forming planetary systems. We may not have found the theory that unites quantum with gravity yet, but every discovery brings us one step closer to that ultimate goal of unification. Throughout our time on this planet, we've pushed the boundaries of existence by asking tough questions and working tirelessly to find the answers. Our species has been defined by its incessant thirst for knowledge and unwavering hope in a unified universe. 350 years have elapsed since our first big successful step in this journey, when Newton unified the heavens with the Earth, revealing that planets, stars, and apples are guided by the same set of laws. 200 years later, James Clerk Maxwell coupled electricity with magnetism, and then Einstein linked space and time and warped them into one fabric that we now know as space-time. Looking at the timeline of these events, it shouldn't be surprising that the road ahead could be much longer. Einstein died dreaming of a physical world governed by one set of laws, a unified framework that can unlock the mysteries of our universe, and Hawking never ceased to look up at the stars and wonder what mysteries lie ahead waiting to be found. Whether the theory of everything is a realistic quest or a delusional attempt to make sense of the absurdity of the universe, one thing is certain. Our unwavering hope in the search for unification will only lead to humanity's advancement as a species. If you feel you're in a black hole, don't give up. There's a way out. Today's video was sponsored by MyHeritage. MyHeritage is the leading global service for family history research and DNA testing. Trusted by 90 million users, MyHeritage not only makes building your family tree a simple and enjoyable activity, it also gives you access to powerful tools that can help you research your family history and grow your tree. MyHeritage is home to more than 18 billion easily searchable historical records, as well as advanced AI technologies for repairing, enhancing, colorizing, and animating your precious historical photos. While researching the theory of everything and thinking about humanity's future, I couldn't help but also think about our past, where we came from, and how we got here. This search pushed me to find information about my family history using MyHeritage. The information I found was so good that I had to make all my friends grow their family tree as well, and Anna Maria's story is the most fascinating of all. With MyHeritage, she was able to discover that her maternal grandmother's mother is a Bernardo, the same Bernardo that's a well-known international pasta brand. Some of her family members also used the site, and so she was able to find photos of her maternal grandparents whom she'd never seen before. As if that wasn't fascinating enough, she was also able to track down her family lineage by 500 years, after which she's discovered that there's a duke in her family. Anna Maria lives in Canada, but she was able to find extended family members in both Italy and Argentina. She even found a cousin who moved from Argentina to Canada, and so she was able to organize a little family reunion with her sister, father, her cousin, and his dad. Next, Anna Maria is headed to Argentina and Italy to visit the rest of her family, all from one quick search on MyHeritage. So, if you would like to find out more about your family history right now, you can sign up for a 14-day free trial and enjoy all the amazing features MyHeritage has to offer. And if you decide to continue your subscription, you also get a 50% discount if you use the link in the description. And who knows, you might also be planning a trip around the world soon.
Mars Climate Orbiter was destined for fame. The first ever interplanetary weather satellite, it was designed to study the climate and atmosphere of the red planet, and among many other things, give scientists their first detailed understanding of the distribution of water on the surface. But instead, on September the 23rd, after 4 years of planning and 10 months of interplanetary travel, just as it began to enter the orbit of its planetary host, all contact was lost. Mission control was instantly thrown into confusion. More than $300 million of equipment and hard work had vanished in an instant. What could have gone wrong? An investigation was begun, and on November the 11th, the Mars Climate Orbiter Mishap Investigation Board released their findings. There had been a miscommunication in the units that had been used to calculate orbital insertion. NASA had employed the metric system of kilograms and meters, while an external contractor had used the same numbers, but assumed them to be in pounds and feet. The modern scientific world relies on collaboration and, above all else, standardization. Without an absolute to measure against, chaos reigns and orbiters disintegrate. Yet whatever we choose, whether it be inches, kilos, or hours, they are ultimately derived from our own existential experiences. An inch is the breadth of a man's thumb, a kilogram is about the mass of a litre of water, and an hour is a purely subjective division of a day here on Earth. But in the cosmos as a whole, there are no men to measure, there's no water to weigh, and the concept of a day on Earth means very little. How then might an extraterrestrial quantify its world? And how should we quantify the universe in the most objective way possible? This was the question that inspired the famed physicist Max Planck in the final years of the 19th century. The German Nobel Prize winner, professor at the Friedrich Wilhelm University in Berlin, spent much of his academic career contemplating how the laws of nature could be subdivided and studied on a minute and discrete scale. The key lay in the physical laws of the universe themselves. While the speed that a planet goes around its star may vary, the speed of light from that star does not. While the gravitational pull on a large planet may differ from the gravity on its moon, the gravitational constant that relates mass to weight does not. So, by manipulating mathematics to set these fundamental properties of space and time equal to 1, it is possible to define fundamental units that apply to the cosmos, regardless of where or when you happen to be observing it. In 1899, Planck revealed his calculations to the world. The eponymous Planck length measures a minuscule 1.6 times 10 to the minus 35 meters, a decillionth of a millimeter. Planck time, calculated by dividing the already tiny Planck length by the very large speed of light, is even smaller, a mere 5.4 times 10 to the minus 44 seconds long. So there are more units of Planck time in a single second than seconds that have ever passed. While these quantities may seem unnecessarily and pointlessly small for our brains to comprehend, in the last century they have become invaluable to physicists, chemists, and cosmologists contemplating the remaining mysteries of the universe, giving us the tools to understand space and time on the most vital scale. Because observations of our universe have lent overwhelming support to a once outlandish theory that the entire universe was born some 13.8 billion years ago from a minuscule speck that expanded rapidly, exponentially. The Big Bang. Modern cosmologists have probed further and further back through our universe's long history to try and understand the behavior of matter, energy, and space-time itself during these earliest moments. And they have been remarkably successful, reconstructing events to within just a tiny fraction of a second of the Big Bang. And it is here, at the forefront of cosmological research, that Max Planck's fundamental units come into their own. Arguably the final frontier of Big Bang science, scientists strive to understand what happened when the cosmos was just 1 unit of Planck time long, and when it was just 1 Planck length in diameter. Appropriately, this minuscule moment has become known as the Planck era, And like other famous frontiers in history, it is a lawless, wild west for modern physics. A place where long-held scientific beliefs snap under the gargantuan pressure of a universe compressed. For in that first moment of existence, our laws of physics break down and reveal a mind-bending world of astonishing possibilities. Before we can comprehend the shattering of those laws, we must first understand what it is that buckles and breaks. In the late 17th century, Isaac Newton published his seminal work, the Principia Mathematica. Within it, he proposed not only his three laws of motion, but also the universal law of gravitation. This simple and elegant calculation related the force of gravity to the masses of two objects, such as a planet and a moon, and the square of the distance between them. This simple relation has become a cornerstone of classical mechanics, and in the intervening centuries has proven remarkably successful at explaining the large-scale motions of all celestial objects. More than 200 years after Newton's Principia, a young man sat doodling in a patent office in Bern in Switzerland, watching the clock count away the final hour of the day. Becoming a patent clerk was not what he had hoped for, but after scraping through school with a reputation for a poor attitude and a failed search for teaching positions, this was one of the few options left to him. But his heart wasn't in it, and even now he sketched tiny model solar systems in the corner of his patent applications, yearning for his true home within his notebooks and personal mathematics. Because, despite his failures as a student, this man was no fool. His attitude may have been bad, but only out of impatience. His mind was alive with the great unanswered questions in physics. His name, of course, was Albert Einstein. In 1905, he definitively threw out the rulebook of classical mechanics in favor of a new theory. This theory, which he called special relativity, described the behavior of things that traveled close to the speed of light. Fortunately for Einstein, his papers found their way to the desk of Max Planck himself, and with his help, was able to leave the life of a patent clerk behind forever. Over the next 10 years, Einstein sought to reconcile gravity with his new framework and the new concepts of space and time that he had established with special relativity. This was no easy task, since Newton's universal law already explained so much. But Einstein kept at it, eventually devising another outlandish theory, which would come to be known as general relativity. The mathematics of general relativity are achingly complex, but Einstein's equations describe a cosmos in which the fabric of space-time itself is affected by the objects within it. Objects with greater mass create curves in space-time. The larger the mass, the greater the curvature. A massive star creates a huge gravity well, and its orbiting planets are trapped circling the curved rim of that well. Subsequent precise measurements and experiments confirmed the validity of this framework, including discrepancies in the orbit of Mercury. By providing the scientific world with a new view on gravity, Einstein paved the way for a truly modern form of physics. More accurate than Newton's classical mechanical approach, these heady concepts of distorted space-time offer a much more precise and predictive toolkit for understanding the cosmos. Solving the equations of general relativity was what allowed the priest, come physicist, Georges Lemaitre, to imagine the expansion of the universe from a hot, dense state, laying the foundation for the modern Big Bang theory. But even Einstein's powerful mathematical solutions run into problems when conditions are extreme enough. In black holes, whose mass can exceed that of 100 billion suns concentrated within a single point, the distortion of space-time is so great that even light cannot escape, and eventually his exquisite mathematics breaks down. Physics may speak of infinitely small points or infinitely high densities, but when infinity is involved, mathematical tools can't cope. And this is key, for this troublesome singularity at the center of a black hole is similar to the extremely dense state of the universe during the Planck era. Very similar. For a fraction of a second, the entire mass of the universe was crammed into a space 100 billion times smaller than a single proton. General relativity can tell us almost everything we want to know about the large-scale gravitational behavior of the universe, but it can't tell us about that first, hyperdense moment. Scientists must look elsewhere for the answers to the Planck mystery. Traditional computers rely on tiny transistors on integrated silicon chips for their computing power. These transistors act like switches that can be either on or off, and by linking millions of them together, they create the base programming for everything that a computer can do. Over the years, engineers have made these transistors ever smaller, shrinking them until they're just 5 nanometers in length, the same as about 10 silicon atoms. With such tiny components, the silicon chips in our PCs, laptops and smartphones are more powerful than ever. But there's a limit to how much further we can go. Any smaller, and once these minuscule, tightly packed transistors are actually put to work, strange things begin to happen. Electrons belonging to a silicon atom on one transistor can suddenly and inexplicably jump to another atom on a neighboring component, disrupting the instructions passing through it. This is just one of the many mysterious behaviors we encounter when we're dealing with the extremely small. As a result, the next generation of computing seeks not to overcome these strange effects, but rather to embrace them. So-called quantum computers encode their information not in silicon transistors, but rather in the weird particles themselves. Individual atoms or electrons have the remarkable ability to inhabit 2 discrete states at once. And quantum computers embrace this by turning them into switches that, like Schrödinger's cat, are simultaneously on and off, until they're not. By understanding and embracing these bizarre behaviors, quantum computing can model and calculate complex and uncertain systems, allowing us to do things that wouldn't be possible even with the most powerful silicon supercomputer. This new age of computing is still in its infancy, but it relies on an entirely new physics framework that is already about 100 years old. The physics of the very small seem to defy our classical experience of the world, but it could hold the key to understanding some of the mysteries of the cosmos, including its very first moments. Around the end of the 19th century, while Planck was considering the fundamental scale of the natural world, his German colleagues and collaborators were trying to understand how matter behaved at these minuscule scales. They postulated that the energy in physical systems, such as light energy moving from a source to a detector, did so in discrete, individual packets, rather than as a continuous stream. Insofar as we experience light, this proposition seems ridiculous. Light behaves just as if it were a wave, reflecting, refracting, spreading out and creating interference patterns, just like waves on the ocean's surface. But under certain conditions, it can also seemingly behave like a particle. Those particles are what we know as photons. In the now famous double-slit experiment, a beam of light passing through both slits will create an interference pattern on the other side, as would be expected for a wave. But if you detect the light as it passes through the slits, then each individual photon passes through one or the other, not both, as a wave would. Thus, we understand that light can be both a particle and a wave at the same time. Once the particular nature of light had been realized, with photons as the smallest possible individual units of light, physicists had a new way of viewing the physical world. They had succeeded in quantizing light into its component photons. But that wasn't all. Scientists soon realized that not just light, but all matter could be quantized into individual minuscule units called quantum wave functions. based on their specific energy levels. The interaction of these quantum wave functions determine what is and what isn't allowed within the physical world. They are the fundamental mechanism of the universe, the reason that anything is here at all. But just as the solutions to Einstein's general relativity equations led to some mind-bending descriptions of curved space-time and expanding universes, so too do the principles of quantum mechanics have some bizarre consequences that seem almost magical in the context of our everyday experiences. Quantum tunneling sees electrons spontaneously cross physical barriers that should stop them in their tracks. It's this phenomenon that makes the smallest silicon computer chips behave so strangely, with electrons jumping from transistor to transistor with no apparent cause. Elsewhere, quantum fluctuations describe the tiny random changes in the amount of energy in a space at any one time. This is one of the weird consequences of the so-called uncertainty principle defined by Werner Heisenberg in 1927. He discovered that certain pairs of parameters like speed and location are inextricably and inversely linked. The more precisely we measure one of them, the less sure we are of the other. So we might know how fast an electron is moving, but we can't say for sure where it is in space. Quantum fluctuations are the natural result of the uncertainty inherent in the physical world. On the smallest scale, at a particular point in time, there might or might not be a little extra energy. We can never say for sure. So, researchers seeking to understand quantum mechanics cannot work in absolutes, only probabilities. Of course, these are the sort of problems in quantum mechanics that it would take a quantum computer to solve. Fortunately for gigantic creatures, reality warping quantum effects rarely affect our daily lives, since they are only seen on extremely small scales. But on those scales, this new framework has given us new ways of predicting the behavior of matter and energy. These are the very scales that we find during the Planck era of our cosmos, and the strange behaviors are what we would expect to encounter when the universe was Planck-sized. But there is still a problem, in the shape of gravity. The Planck universe was so dense that the effects of gravity cannot possibly be ignored, and yet gravity is the domain of general relativity, not quantum mechanics. Physicists have tried for decades to reconcile the two, to write the conclusive final chapter of modern physics that can unite these accurate but incompatible worldviews. And the holy grail of that search, the final key to unlocking the Planck era, is the theory of quantum gravity. "150 meters beneath the border of France and Switzerland, there is a vast concrete tunnel that, like some monstrous subterranean Ouroboros, leads only back to itself in a ring 27 kilometers long. The Ouroboros is a fitting analogy for this immense structure, signifying birth and death in an eternal cycle. For this is the Large Hadron Collider, and is the largest experiment modern physicists have yet devised to study some of the smallest phenomena in the universe and understand the birth and death of the cosmos itself. It is a particle accelerator, using magnetic and electron fields placed at intervals along a huge vacuum-filled tube to accelerate protons and ions almost to the speed of light, before smashing them into one another and then scrambling to interpret patterns among the random subatomic debris. Only with such a huge and complex facility are physicists able to generate the high energies needed to smash particles apart and search for the smaller units that define all matter. But not even the Large Hadron Collider can solve the mystery of the Planck era or help in the search for the hallowed theory of quantum gravity. By their very nature, quantum gravitational effects will only begin to appear at Planck scales. To truly understand them, we need to visualize them. But in order to shatter particles into fragments as small as the Planck length, we need to generate energies far in excess of any that have been realized in the Large Hadron Collider or elsewhere. If we used a particle accelerator, it would need to be scaled up to the size of the entire solar system or larger to generate the required energies. Suffice to say, for now, we must stick to theoretical models. But theoretical modelling can only take us so far. 3 of the 4 major natural forces that permeate the universe, the strong force, the weak force, and the electromagnetic force, could all be effectively described by quantum theory. But gravity cannot. The problem with reconciling the gravitation of general relativity with the quantum behaviour of matter is that the 2 systems, while internally consistent, are fundamentally incompatible with one another. General relativity is principally concerned with modelling curved spacetime, while quantum field theories demand a spacetime that is unilaterally flat. What's more, quantum mechanics say that every particle has its own intrinsic wave function. It is less a point, more a smear, whereas general relativity insists that every particle exerts a gravitational force as a result of its distortion of spacetime. But in extremely compact situations, like during the Planck era, the particles are packed so closely that their wave function smears begin to overlap, at which point even the meaning of gravity, which notionally lies in the space between them, breaks down. To overcome these fundamental disagreements, theoretical physicists have attempted to define a quantum unit of gravity, a massless messenger particle known as a graviton, which carries gravity just as a photon carries light. But the action of gravity is so weak, relatively speaking, that such a particle would be nigh on impossible to detect. Other theories of quantum gravity describe an entirely new framework that can account for the behavior of gravity on the quantum scale. One, known as loop quantum gravity, suggests that space is composed of Planck-length scale loops that are woven into an extremely fine network like an eternal hooked rug. Another alternative is M theory, or superstring theory. This is a favourite among physicists seeking to unite not only general relativity and quantum mechanics, but all modern theories of particle physics under the so-called Standard Model. In it, all-encompassing superstrings in 11 separate dimensions may account for all physical phenomena on all conceivable scales, providing a theory of everything, if we could only wrap our minds around the bulk of multi-dimensional hyperspace. If anything, this is yet another problem for the multitasking quantum computers of the future. Today, physicists worldwide are aggressively attacking the problem of quantum gravity, offering theoretical solutions in the form of gravitons, loop quantum gravity, and superstring theory. But so far, their search for this unifying holy grail has gone unrewarded. We have many ideas of how quantum gravity might work, but little evidence to suggest which, if any, are correct. Yet, it is with this informed speculation, born out of centuries of study by thousands upon thousands of scientific giants, that we can begin to paint a picture of the cosmos in its very first moment. The Princeton University campus sprawls across 500 acres of the New Jersey countryside, surrounded by pine forests and salt marshes. It is some 50 kilometers from the Atlantic coast, but the long beaches of Sandy Hook Bay are a perfect spot for a summer sabbatical, away from the rigors of university research and teaching. So, in the summer of 1955, we can picture the pioneering theoretical physicist John Wheeler walking along the sand, his head full of relativistic theories of light, matter, and gravity. Pausing to look out across the gentle swells of the North Atlantic Ocean, he follows the waves as they mount up towards the shore and then collapse in a turbulent, seething wall of white foam. As the sea foam inches along to overwhelm his feet to the ankles, John considers this as yet another dynamical system that seems to evade description. The bubbles in the foam combine, break, and reform, driven by complex and chaotic force. It would be impossible to predict the configuration from one moment to the next. A tiny spark glimmers in the back of John Wheeler's mind, and he keeps walking. That year, Professor John Wheeler of Princeton University published his theories on gravitational fields, in which he argued that at the very smallest scales, the ability to even define length, time, and energy would be fundamentally compromised by the uncertainty principle of quantum mechanics. Continuous space-time would instead be reduced to an unpredictable quantum foam, which shifted and fluctuated randomly on the smallest possible scales. And this is the scale that defined the beginning of the cosmos. By combining the revelations of the last 100 years in physics, including general relativity, quantum mechanics, and the as-yet unrealized theories of quantum gravity, cosmologists can try to paint a picture of the Planck era of our universe. And it is a perplexing one, indeed. For the first 10 million trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, the universe is just 10 to the minus 33 meters across, 100 billion times smaller than a proton. Here, since space-time is yet to come into existence, time itself is undefined, and space is ultra-compactified. Superstring theories suggest that at this point the universe exists in no less than 10 dimensions, which would soon collapse into a mere 4. But a multi-dimensional hyperspace is beyond the limits of our visual imagination, and the best impressionist imagery we can conjure is that of John Wheeler's quantum foam. Here, space-time folds and meshes into itself and is meshed into quantum micro-black holes and wormholes. The geometry of space twists and contorts instantaneously and unpredictably, and far-flung regions of space are connected by quantum wormholes and micro-black holes that appear and disappear without warning. The spontaneous appearance and disappearance of gravitons ruled by the uncertainty principle gives space a lumpy and dynamic appearance. There is no cause and effect, and we can suspend all our expectations of normal physical laws, for if anything governs here, it is the weirdness of quantum mechanics. Inexplicable quantum fluctuations, tunneling and entanglement cause space itself to writhe, flicker and glitch like some horribly corrupted simulation. At any one time, the geometry of space is an average of all possible geometries. Theoreticians will never be able to figure out how the history of the universe played out before the end of the Planck era. It would be like trying to construct a family tree when every human alive on the planet could be your parent. Before long, the randomness becomes overwhelming, the probabilities unfeasibly small. Where theoreticians may soon fail, experimental physicists never stood a chance. Even if we somehow managed to generate the monumental energies required to simulate quantum gravity and the conditions during the Planck era, the data would be incomprehensible. Colliding gravitons or quantum loops or superstrings are expected to create micro-quantum black holes that would immediately evaporate into a hailstorm of random gravitons. Any detection from such a collision would find it impossible to search for non-random patterns, to even begin to understand what is going on. So, for now, we must be content with the imagery that our current, limited physical frameworks can provide. It may not seem like much, but it is a crowning achievement of modern physics to be able to probe the universe at such minute scales. But perhaps by standing further back, admiring the view and trying to understand the later periods, we may be able to find fingerprints of the perplexing time that came before. You've been watching the entire history of the universe. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment to tell us what you think. And we'll see you next time.
In life, anything is possible. Because we can never fully understand how the world works, and the laws of physics prevent us from being able to tell the future, everything we predict is a probability. Some are a lot more probable, others are less probable, while some have astronomically low chances of ever happening. The probability is vanishingly small, but it remains non-zero. Would you get hit by a car? Will you get struck by lightning? Will we ever achieve world peace? If there is a chance that anything can happen, what are the odds? I was scrolling through the deepest parts of the internet one day when I came across this man, Roy Cleveland Sullivan, the man who has been hit by lightning 7 times in his lifetime. The odds of getting struck by lightning once isn't that low, it's just about 1 in 15,000. Even if you live in a small town, chances are that somebody in that town has been struck by lightning at least once. The odds of being struck 7 times in a period of 80 years? That's a 1 in 10 to the 28 chance. This seems like such incredible and unfortunate odds, until you consider the fact that you're more likely to get struck by lightning 7 times than you are to shuffle a deck of cards into perfect numerical order. Those odds? 1 in 10 to the 68. Probability is something that we can't really comprehend as humans. If we did, we'd stop worrying about a lot of things and stop taking granted for most of the things we should be worried about. Like sharks. No thanks to the movie Jaws, humans now have an immense fear of sharks. But the reality is, you're more likely to get killed by a vending machine than you are to get killed by a shark. The odds of getting killed by a vending machine are 1 in 112 million, while the odds of getting killed by a shark are a staggering 1 in 250 million. Now, the odds that you'll be attacked by a shark are much lower at 1 in 3.7 million, but even that is still too high for the monsters we've branded sharks to be. For context, you're more likely to get killed by a dog at a 1 in 112,400 chance than you are to get killed by a shark, but we still keep them in our homes as loving pets. You're more likely to get killed by hornets, wasps, or bees at 1 in 63,225 than you are to get killed by a shark. In fact, you're more likely going to get killed by the government for committing murder at 1 in 119,000 than you are for getting killed by a shark. When you put a little thought into it, you realize that most of the time, our fears are sensational and not rational. When something tragic happens and it garners a lot of public attention, we are more likely to be afraid of that thing, even if it is much less common than the less notorious things. The most prominent example of this is the way we treat plane crashes. Now yes, when planes do crash, it is tragic. But because they cause such a big spectacle and have lots of media coverage, we forget that it is still by far the safest way to travel. Passenger airplane incidents are very rare, and your odds of dying in a plane crash are very slim at 1 in 205,000. That's incredibly low when you compare it to your odds of dying in a car accident, which is just 1 in 107. For motorcycle riders, it's 1 in 890, and even pedestrians aren't safe at 1 in 541. But wait, maybe the reason the airplane deaths are so low has to do something with our fear. Before people go on an airplane, they usually prepare well in advance. No harmful objects are allowed on board, and there's always usually more than one designated pilot who was trained for years on safety practices before they were ever allowed to fly a plane. Compare that to road travel, where we don't really think that much about it, and you can maybe see why things are the way they are. And with the odds that you'll be involved in a drunk driving accident in your lifetime being incredibly high at 2 in 3, you can see what I mean. We barely give it any thought. Hopefully, we can all do better. Try to reduce the risk by simply designating a driver beforehand or taking an Uber when you go out for fun.
Before we continue, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsor, Incogni. What are the odds that your information will be leaked in a data breach? If you didn't know, it's pretty high and it's getting worse. A report from Identity Theft Resource Center showed that there were 68% more data breaches in 2021 than there were in 2020. Unfortunately, the only way to stop this is a very tedious process. You need to email every single data broker and request that they delete the information they have about you. You then have to go through all the hoops, reply to all their objections, and fight desperately for your own privacy. Because of how valuable your data is to these companies, this process can genuinely take years. But Incogni can help you guarantee your privacy the easy way. All you have to do is create an account and grant them the right to work for you. And that's it. Incogni will reach out to data brokers on your behalf to request all your personal data be deleted and deal with any objection from the data brokers. It's literally that easy. To get started, sign up using the link in the description. The first 100 people to use code Aperture with the link below get 20% off of Incogni. It's completely risk-free for 30 days, so I encourage every one of you to at least give it a try, and if you're not happy, you get a full refund anyway. But I can assure you, when you see just how many data brokers have your information, you'll definitely want to keep your subscription. Back to our story.
Another thing we should be worried about is right-handed appliances. Yes, it's true that most of the world is right-handed, for some reason. But if we're learning anything as a species, its inclusiveness. We must do the same with dominant hands because, as it is, the odds of a left-handed person dying simply because they used a right-handed appliance wrong is 1 in 7 million. And while the chances look ridiculously slim, it has to happen to somebody. If you don't die, hey, you'll get a lot of free money from that lawsuit. The ambidextrous people among us can help us decide what appliances are better suited for what dominant hand. And we have a surprising amount of them, 1 in 100 to be exact. Now this does not include people who have had to learn how to use their non-dominant hand because of injury or out of curiosity. It's just people who are born with an amazing control of both of their hands. Art is very subjective. What some people might find beautiful, others will find ugly. What one might consider great acting, others might see it as over the top and annoying. You see, much unlike science, art doesn't have a definitive set of rules, and so they don't have a strict guideline for judgment either. And while this allows for creativity, it also makes it very difficult to find success in the world of the arts. If you want to be a surgeon, for instance, you know that if you pass the med school exams, intern, go through residency, and so forth, you'll make it. You have a set path to follow. But if you want to be a supermodel or a rock star or a YouTuber, it's not that straightforward. You have to work hard at it every single day, and even then, your odds are very slim. You can be a theater kid all your life, go to film school, practice as much as possible. But in the end, the odds that you'll become a movie star aren't very encouraging, at just 1 in 1.1 million. It's amazing so that even with the odds as slim as this, every year, thousands of people will travel from all parts of the world to LA, trying to fulfill their dreams of being on the big screen. When interestingly, you have a much better chance of winning an Oscar at just 1 in 11,500 than becoming a movie star. But of course, this Oscar includes all the technical awards that are given when everyone is taking a bathroom break. And most people would much rather take a 1 in 1.1 million chance than to receive an award when no one's watching. If you're a writer, however, the odds are slightly in your favor. There is a 1 in 220 chance that you'll write a New York Times bestseller. If you put in the time and the effort necessary, these odds are definitely going to go up, bringing you that inch closer to making your dream a reality. Sports are closer related to science than arts, because most of the time, if you work at it hard enough, you'll achieve some kind of success. But how hard can you work when there's only so many medals to go around? Millions of people around the world dedicate their entire lives to competing in the Olympics, yet only 1 in 662,000 will ever win a medal. And that's the thing about scarcity. When there's such limited space, the odds of ever being able to do or acquire said thing just gets increasingly thinner. Think about the number of children who have worn a spacesuit and helmet to career day in school and told everybody that they want to be astronauts. Now think about the fact that the odds of becoming an astronaut are 1 in 12.1 million, and you get sad for those little kids whose dreams will one day have to be crushed. What if they wanted to be president? Well, the chance of becoming a US president is 1 in 10 million. Unless you're a religious 6-foot-tall Harvard Law graduate and military veteran. Then your odds go up astronomically, especially if you're a Harvard alumni, because as surprising as it might sound, the odds that the President of America has attended Harvard is 1 in 3.58. So if you want to have the best chance of becoming president, you know what school to apply for. However, getting into Harvard is almost as difficult as becoming president when you're done. With a chance of just 4.6% of getting in, you might want to apply to some backup schools as well. At the end of the day, we all just want to be successful. Whether it's through the arts, or going through the so-called traditional route of finishing college and getting a good job. We all just want to have enough money to live comfortably while we're still young. But sadly, the odds are stacked against us. There's a slim chance of just between 6.4% and 22.3% that you'll become a millionaire, with different factors like race, education, wealth status, and age helping to place you somewhere in that range. While the chance of becoming a billionaire? Well, there's 8 billion humans in the world, and only around 2,000 billionaires, so basically, non-existent. Getting old has a bittersweet taste to it. On the one hand, you're getting wiser, more mature, and you have a much better understanding of the world than you did when you were younger. But on the other hand, you're also getting weaker, you're forgetting things more. And sadly, your body just keeps breaking down, one after the other, and the stats don't really help at all. If you're under 20 right now, there's a 1 in 4 chance that you'll be disabled before you retire. And it gets worse. There's a 1 in 2 chance that at the age of 75, you'll have disabling hearing loss. This is why whenever people say they want to work hard now so they can enjoy their retirement, I kind of feel bad for them. Because most times, at that age, you don't really get to enjoy anything. All you can really do is sit around and reminisce on a life that once was, and when the Grim Reaper comes, you say goodbye to your loved ones and move on. And that's why you should do everything you want to do right now. For some reason, there's a 7% higher chance that you'll die on your birthday than on any other day, going out together with the candles. But for a few of us, living to 100 is possible, with the odds of that happening being approximately 1 in 5,780, with those odds increasing significantly if you're biologically a woman. On the other hand of the spectrum, one of the most incredible human achievements is being born. If you're here watching this video right now, you deserve a round of applause. You ran, you fought, you survived. And against all odds, you made it. The odds of you existing were 1 in 5.5 trillion. But here you are. You might have been the 1 in 20 chance of being born on your mom's exact due date. Or you're like most of us who are born around 2 weeks before or after. You might be the 1 in 250 who are geniuses, burdened with the weight of advancing our civilization, or like the rest of us who are cheering them on. Whoever you are, whatever it took you to get here, that was an incredible feat, one that is unrepeatable. Not in this lifetime, at least.
As light travels through space, it behaves like a wave, but light is also made of tiny particles called photons. This is the paradox of wave particles, and it has completely revolutionized modern physics. The universe is filled with intriguing paradoxes like this, statements that challenge our understanding of reality and force us to question our deepest assumptions. These paradoxes have the power to change our lives in profound ways, opening us up to new possibilities and reshaping the very fabric of our existence. Here are paradoxes that will change your life.
Well, the lotto jackpot has grown to over $64 million.
It all started with a lottery ticket.
You got the lowest one!
If you go out and buy a lottery ticket knowing fully well that your chances of winning are 10 million to 1, it'd be logical to assume you didn't win. You'd also be justified in thinking that your friend, your uncle, his sister, your cousin, and their dog all have losing tickets. You're justified in believing that everyone who bought a ticket will lose, even when you know the lottery was fair and there has to be a winner. Somehow you're justified in believing something you know to be false. This demonstrates that truth is relative. It depends on context, prejudice, and your perspective about the world. Because the truth is, the only thing you can prove with certainty is that nothing is certain. This is why people don't consider Pinocchio saying, "My nose will grow now," to be a paradox. His nose will not grow because he didn't lie. He simply made a false prediction. If we have a set of all sets that do not contain themselves, does that set contain itself? Imagine there's a barber who shaves all men who don't shave themselves, and only men who don't shave themselves. Does the barber shave himself? This is an example of Russell's paradox, a paradox that shook the mathematical world. These paradoxes playfully nudge us into realizing that self-reference can often lead to unexpected contradictions. Contradictions aside, though, we all want to be happy, but those who seek out happiness directly often don't find it. This is the paradox of hedonism. If we truly want to be happy, we need to stop searching for happiness and pursue other meaningful activities like nurturing our relationships or serving others. And only then can we be truly happy. The pursuit of pleasure in its raw form often leads to disappointment, while a life lived in service can lead to unexpected happiness. Deep down we all know this. Endless partying, decadent eating habits, and shopping sprees. We know these activities are never as fulfilling as we think they are, and more often than not, we're left with a sense of emptiness after the dust settles. It's called post-indulgence clarity. We see this paradox even in our relationships. Expecting your partner to completely control your happiness often makes them unable to make you happy. At least not in the way you want it. The reality is that to have good relationships, we need to be somewhat independent of them. People think that to find the right partner, they need all the options in the world to pick the perfect person, but in truth, having more options isn't always better. Just look at the fact that we have all these dating apps at our fingertips, and many of us still can't find a healthy relationship. This is the paradox of choice, and contrary to what we think, many options often leave us less satisfied with our final decision. I once watched a TikTok where this guy said men today see more beautiful women while scrolling through TikTok for 5 minutes than kings from the past did in their entire lives, and although it was a joke, he was entirely correct. But it's not a good thing. According to biological anthropologist Helen Fisher, the human brain isn't built to deal with more than 5 to 9 options for a partner. After that, the brain goes into decision paralysis, where it almost refuses to pick. So the next time you feel inundated by options, remember that less is sometimes better, and more data may not always be more informative. Learning is great. Asking questions and figuring out how things work is how our species has gotten to where it is today. But learning is also a paradox, because the more you know, the more you realize you don't.